What is up, party people? We are live. This is Real Estate Uncensored. I've got my boy, the evil bald ninja, is here. Gene Volpe. We've got Justin Zimmerman is back. We're talking about his insane 1,000-day streak of running a 5K every day. And we're going to talk a little bit about if you are on the, as Gene would put it, the struggle bus, whatever the hell that means. If you're having one of those days, we're going to talk about how to push through pain, how to conquer inconsistency, and change your life starting today. And really, we're talking about how to make permanent changes. So you're not just as Justin put it, you're not just a tourist in the land of success, but you actually become a permanent resident. So we've got a bunch of stuff to get to. The reason why I say Gene and Justin and didn't mention my normal illustrious and esteemed colleague, Greg McDaniel, is because he is unfortunately sick as a dog today. So he will not be joining us. So I've got Gene and Justin with us, and we're going to have a good time. So first of all, Gene,
yes,
what's
sir.
up today?
What's going on, Matt Johnson? I think struggle bus. So struggle bus is something that we've used for years over here, and I think Greg would be the perfect example of somebody who's on the struggle bus today. So with sickness is one way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, mental blockage is another way. Fear of failure. It's all these things. When you're in your own headspace with your own head trash, as some of my friends like to say, that's when you start feeling sorry for yourself. That is when you have purchased a ticket to the struggle bus or on the struggle bus.
the personal pity party.
That's it. Yeah.
That's a good point. I like that. That's a good definition of it. And then Justin, what's up?
Lots of things, guys. Great to be back. I miss y'all. I know I've moved into a new space and place, but coming back to my old friends and family here for the real estate agent audience always lights me up in that. I do want to share. It's a great topic, the struggle bus, the 1,000 days in a row. I look at that and I'm like, the antidote to the struggle bus, I think we're going to be able to get into today. And so I hope by the end of this podcast, for all of us, the three of us as friends and anybody watching and listening, that they're going to have some realistic, simple, easy in the sense of easy to understand, very hard to do approaches that I've used over the last 1,000 days to overcome the struggle bus. Every day is a struggle bus in some way, some days less than others. And I'm hoping to be an advocate starting right now with you guys, but going forward for how do you deal with anxiety and depression? I think that's what a lot of people don't talk about. They feel it, they hold it, and they allow it to consume their lives. And I think that I'd love to unpack and spend time today looking at the toolkit that I've built to handle my own anxiety and depression and how effective it is in minimal doses. Good old Tim Ferriss, minimal effective doses. That anybody can use to get themselves off the struggle bus temporarily and consistently, temporarily for the day and then consistently over time.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the anxiety and depression stuff is interesting, and we can definitely dig into that because any human being deals with it at times. I think any entrepreneur deals with it probably more than maybe the average person. I mean, maybe that's prejudice to say that, but I mean, entrepreneurialism is no matter how stable you are in your own person, entrepreneurialism is a roller coaster ride in and of itself. So if you weren't already prone to roller coaster rides, you just hopped on one just by being a business owner or a commissioned salesperson. So I do feel like we are prone to more external events that have the potential to put us into that depression and anxiety. And then if you're already kind of like I feel like I was predisposed to it anyway, just because of my personality. And then you stack entrepreneurialism on top of that, and that's a recipe for some very bad days. So first of all, I want to go back to the beginning a little bit briefly. And I want to ask just why running, why that amount, and just the initial, just real quick, what was the initial decision like, and why did you pick that versus some of the other things that you could have picked?
All right. So snakes on a plane. There's a line from that isn't the right words, but has the right energy. Okay. And so if anybody knows that famous line, it's Samuel L. Jackson saying something like, I've had it with these,
right.
His word, snakes on this plane, just kind of like I got to the point where And there's some other cofactors underneath this, but I looked in the mirror one day and I saw something different than I thought, right? The mental image and the physical image were two different things. And I recognized that who I was on the inside was not being reflected back on the outside. I was fat, I was unhappy, and I was frustrated by circumstances which I thought were beyond my control. And so I had this bundle of energy, anxiety, pressure, frustration, and I needed to channel it somewhere. And so I had been a runner before, not anything to the extent, and never with any sort of like flair or accomplishment in the level of prestige. But I ran. I was on the track team and stuff in high school, but I was junior JV, but I ran.
Yeah, so it's in your background a little bit, and you knew the feeling of it.
And I knew the feeling of it. I knew it had worked before, and I'm like, I know every time I get out there and I run, I always feel better. And so I actually have a saying I wrote down. I have all these little. Have any of you guys gotten any of my Aqua Notes as gifts? I send those shower note Aqua Note things. So I got one I wrote down the other day. I brought here with me, but one that from a while back I knew that I wrote down insight for myself was exercise is my cure. Exercise is my cure, and people are my fuel. And so I've known for a while that exercise has always been something. Everybody knows it. You know this. Everybody knows exercise. You feel like you're on the struggle bus, go for a walk, go for a run, go lift some weights, go do some jumping jacks, stand up right now and do a little scream or a yell or a punch, whatever. Everybody knows that Tony Robbins says, change your state, change your mindset, something like that, right? Everybody, so I knew it, but was I doing anything with it? Right? I could feel it and I was holding it back for what? And so, in my life at the time, I recognized, well, in retrospect, there were really three areas that we all live in. There's where we work, there's where we live, and then there's where we reside. And where we reside is inside of ourselves. And of those three environments, the one that you have the most control over is where you reside. And so things at work and at home were challenging. And so I had enough awareness to realize that the only thing that I could change, that whole saying, was who I was on the inside. And, I may get made fun of a little bit about the whole Forrest Gump thing, but I just one day put my shoes on and I just started running, and there was never a goal. So that was the other part of it. And I think this is really helpful for me and for them. There wasn't like, I'm going to get to 10 days. I'm going to get to 50 days. I'm going to run this fast. There was never any metrics other than, can I put my shoes on, touch the doorknob, and walk through that threshold? Like,
I was going to say, what was the initial? So you started running. When did you decide, okay, this is a streak that I now care about, that I'm going to keep going? Or was that right off the bat, just how long of a streak can I do? Was it a question right away?
I think once I got to like 4 or 5 days, I'm like, well, I started doing this. Can I do 6 or 7? Can I do 8 or 9? Can I do 12 or 14? Can I do 30? Can I do 50? Can I do 75? Can I do 100? Can I go a whole year? Right? It's just like in real estate, when you're on a winning streak, right? When you're doing well, everybody knows what that feels like. When I used to work at Red X, prospectors try to make how many days in a row happen in a row. You just start to, and that's the game I started to realize we all need to play, is like, it's not me versus them, it's me versus me. And so what score can I keep for myself that's motivating? Like you said, Matt, like you missed that one day, right? There wasn't any like judge or group of people that were like, oh, you didn't, take the cold shower today. Oh, you're off the team. It was like, it was all intrinsic, how to find intrinsic motivation. And so,
that's kind of how it started for me too. Like the streak of cold showers and stuff. I just started doing it. And then I didn't intend to make it a streak, but I was working with a business coach at the time that we were talking about that in other contexts, like business, putting a streak together. And so I started with the cold showers, and then that morphed into, like, I've kept that up. So that stayed consistent. Like that is now a permanent part of my life. I will probably take a cold shower every morning until I die. But that morphed into, at some point I did 190 days or whatever of workouts. And they didn't have to be all the same intensity. Like I wasn't grinding and pounding my body into submission. I was taking some workouts were recharging or mobility and flexibility type workouts. But I think this is the part that really hit me the most, is once I did those two things, it started to change my perception of who I am.
Mm.
I didn't set out to necessarily make those streaks, but once I realized the power of building a streak, even if some of those days are imperfect, the streak as a whole starts to change your perception of who you are. So like you're like, yeah, I used to run in high school. Now running is part of your identity. You're a guy that gets up every day, puts on his shoes, grabs that doorknob, walks out the door and does something you don't necessarily want to do that day. Like it starts to change your perception of who you are, and that affects your self-confidence. It affects your ability to tackle other challenges. It gives you the ability to then stack other habits on top of it and get the day started right. Like there's a lot of benefits to it. But to me, like this is like the missing key to personal development, because we talked about this in the pre-show. Everybody wants these big, massive changes because they want results now. But what you end up, to me, the better way to do it is to make smaller changes, but make them permanent, which is that that's essentially what you've done with the running. So let's talk a little bit about that. So how has it changed your perception of who you are?
It's raised myself to the person who I always thought I could be or wanted to be, or at least gave me the baseline to build on top of that. And I think a lot of us feel bad and on the struggle bus because we're underperforming our potential and we're letting ourselves down. And that feels bad, you know? And like I had lived that way for too long. And maybe me looking in the mirror or the physical representation was a psychological reflection back of who I wasn't and who I wanted to be. Again, back to enough is enough with these snakes on this plane. I love that. Every time I hear that, I just I'll watch that scene over and over again. And that really that was the transformation point for me.
So it gave you a sense of living up to your own potential.
It gave me the baseline.
The baseline.
Like, I've entered into my 40s. Probably the majority of people who are listening to this are 30 to 60, right? I mean, 22 to 80, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
And I started thinking about the future, and I started regretting not taking advantage of some God-given talents that were speaking to me. And the thing that I wanted to know, and I used to say this more, and I'd love to bring it back, and it was, again, on a shower note that sticks to my wall in my shower. I look at it, and it would say, what does the ultimate Justin Zimmerman look like? What do I look like? What does it feel like? And when I asked myself that question, it inspired me. And like, I fall into lower self-thinking all the time, but I try to be my own coach and put little questions that bring my head back up and say, oh, right. Yes. Remember when you were in this higher state? When I wasn't on the struggle bus, I was on the power parade or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I like
walking the power parade, all of us, walking down the street. I try to leave myself clues. It's like that movie Memento. Who remembers that from back in the day, where the guy had amnesia and he had to piece together his own life? And I think when you're on the struggle bus, you're in your own version of that movie Memento, where you're like, who am I? And like, what am I doing here? And why do I feel ambiguous and kind of uncentered about things? And so I try to leave myself clues when I'm in this higher state, so that way I'm like, oh, right. Yeah. Like ultimate self. What does that look like? And the running for me is a consistent tool that I've discovered. Consistency over intensity. I'm not fast by any means. I'm not going to win any races. I'm probably not going to get any sort of endorsements. Yeah, I once said, like, I've found the average guy's guide to greatness. Like, average guy's guide to greatness. You're going to be your own hero in your own life. You're never really going to be a movie star. That's okay. But I have got my life. I've got my family. I've got my job. And so how can I create 20 to 40 minutes a day compounded 1,000 times? What does that turn me into in my own world? Right. And so if I never came on this podcast or the other podcast I'm going to be on, I know I could look at myself in the mirror, and I do it sometimes too. When I'm in a shitty mood and I'm not wearing a shirt, I'm like, damn, you look good. You look good. Good job. I forget, like, remember, you did this work. I've got pictures of myself, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man style, gut sticking out, popping a button. It's hilarious. And now I'm like, all right, if I wanted to, maybe I could, create my own cover to Men's Fitness magazine for me.
For you.
And,
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not really for vanity as much as it is for, I like the world to look good. I like my environment to be a reflection of improvement. And if I look in the mirror, it starts with me. The external world is the outcome of my thinking. And I'll kind of wrap up this little part with the most recent shower note I pulled off the wall for this conversation today is, yesterday I was just like, I felt overwhelmed by work and things weren't going as fast and furious as I want. And my negative thinking popped in there. By the way, I waited for the end of the day to run. So I didn't do that in the beginning. So I know that's a factor. If I ran in the morning, that's almost a guarantee that the rest of my day is going to go good. Cause then I'm thinking about it and I'm procrastinating and what a procrastination. We can get into that later, but I wrote this down in some clarity after my run this morning. This is fresh off the shower wall. And I realized that my biggest problem in my life is not other people. It's my thinking. It always comes back down to my thinking. It's like, I'm thinking shitty thoughts, so I'm feeling shitty feelings. My perception of opportunity and greatness or negativity and anger and blame, the only difference between positivity and negativity most often is how much negativity am I thinking or positive. That's it. And I'm like, if I can master that, that's the master of martial arts right there, is how to, like, when that what's that bus we're talking about? Or struggle bus. When that struggle bus starts to, the struggle bus is a function of thinking. And I'm like, I'm on the struggle bus right now. Quick. What are 5 things I could do? One of those immediately to help me get off the struggle bus. That's it. And running for me is like the insurance policy. It is the prequel.
Like break glass in case of fire.
It's the preventative medicine.
Preventative medicine. Okay,
it's preventative. It keeps me off the struggle bus, or as bad of a bumpy bus as it could be, because it's really hard to feel bad when you're running. Like maybe running sucks, but like that's what sucks.
It's not. Speak for yourself. I feel bad every time I run.
That's what I'm saying is what sucks in the moment isn't your thoughts about what you're thinking. What actually sucks is the thing that sucks. That's like that's what I realized.
It forces you to be in the present. That's for sure.
That's right. This is hard, and this is hard because this is hard, not because of my thinking, but this is. Yeah. And so it makes you very present with your pain, and then you get to have these negotiations with yourself that you then get to take forward into other parts of your life.
Yeah, that's true.
So, hey, listen, I'd like to ask a couple statistical questions, if I could.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just curious. Like you said, you're not the fastest in the world. What's a good mile time for you now compared to what it was when you started? Were you tracking that at all? Right. Well, I answer that first, then I'll go into the next question.
Sure. I was probably faster when I started. One, because I was younger. Yeah, I was younger, and I had less like miles on this body, and so I would say I was probably at first, I think I was doing like probably 10 and 11 minute miles, right? So not so fast. Then there was a time where I feel like maybe I was in maybe around day 300 ish was probably my peak, where I was probably doing like 7:30, 7:45 a minute. So like more of a 21 minute 5K. And now that I've really shifted my focus to, I am actually going to be doing this for the long term, because I never really knew how far I was going to go and get with this, like run 10 days, 5 days, 100 days, 1,000 days. There was never a like how much perpetuity is in this. But now that it's really become like perpetual, it's better I run slow and long than fast and any other variation. So, I mean, I'm probably right around a 9.5 minute mile, and I can feel it. I go, I can run this pace for the next 20 years.
Yeah. Nice. And so a couple other questions I have for you. Like, I was thinking, progress happens by accident when you stick with something, right? And whatever that progress looks like to you, in my mind, I thought you were going to tell me you were a little faster on the mile. That's not the case. But you have other things that came out of your every single day running, which is now you know what your pace is going to be in order for you to be able to maintain that for the next 40 years, right? So that's a win for me, right? Talk to me about rest. I mean, there's got to be days where your body's like, listen, bro, it's enough. Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there have been days, and they come up about every 8 or 9 months, where I'm like, I think I'm at the end. My knee hurts in this way that's never hurt before. I run outside every day, so there's no treadmill. This is not an indoor activity. This is outdoors, all 4 seasons, whether it's 90 degrees or 9 degrees. And the winters are hard. I'm anticipating not really wanting this winter to happen again, because it freezes up, and it's like a car and a boat or any machinery. It needs more prep and more work. And there are those days where I'm like, I think I'm at the end. I don't, my knees really hurt. My ankles hurt. And the answer that's come back to me every single time, and there's an analogy here for life, is that oftentimes you reach a point of pain or frustration or capitulation. I think that's really the word. We get to a point of like, no more. And then you realize there's just a little sliver of something you could change, and all of a sudden it gets you past that block. And so for me, it was like, have you done your foam rolling? Have you used a little tiger tail thing? There's always a solution or tactic, no matter what the environment is. Have you tried something? I realized there was this. It was like, where you feel tension, you need to put attention. That's always been the case. So whether it's emotional tension or physical tension, if you take a little bit of time in the morning or whatever, your moment of reflection is for whatever that activity is, oftentimes it's just a little bit of awareness, and then the answer will come to you. So did I go down to the spa and get the massage on my knees and legs done? No. Okay. Well, did you do that? Great. Have you been stretching? Right. There's all these things that all right. Yeah.
If you care enough about the end result, you start running through those calculations. If you're not looking for those options, it's a signal you don't care enough about doing what you committed to do.
There's that, but I also think society has us trained, and I learned this a long time ago. Society has us trained that when we feel pain, we need to stop, and that we need to go see a doctor. Like,
oh yeah, well, that's true.
So that the solutions to our problems are external to ourselves. The same way our problems are external to ourselves, the solutions to our problems are external to ourselves. And I realized that, oh, right, yes, that hurts, but there are things I can go do to take care of myself and take ownership of my self-care, both physically and mentally. And that's really the big unlock, is like, you run into the challenges, and this one moment is a reflection or fractal for how you live your whole life. How you show up anywhere is how you show up everywhere. And I'm like, oh, my toe hurts. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of a cramp. I got to stop. I got to go see a chiropractor, or I got, you got to go do this external thing. But like, what have you done for yourself and taking ownership, right? Are you just putting it on other people and other things to manage your wellness, or have you really taken 20 minutes in the morning to stretch or yoga or breathe or whatever the solution might be for you?
Good stuff. So now I wonder, how many days are left till you hit the 1,000?
I don't, August 23rd. So okay. whatever that is.
So I'm curious, have you, and I asked this question because I have some personal experience with folks that have done something like this. Have you thought about what happens on day 1001?
Yeah.
What's that look like? What's that look like?
There's a part of me, like, I know I'm not going to, but I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, I whatever badge, there's really 2 conversations going on inside of me about that. There's the one, which is the egoic, like, how do I show up in the world? How am I recognized? How am I liked? How can I be accepted? What doors can open? This guy's the 1,003 day guy, the 1,004 day guy. But then, like, it became, I don't even want to say excessive. It became like egoically driven. And so now I'm doing the thing I just told you that you shouldn't do, which is looking for external validation and support outside of yourself. For like, one thing I know, I want to be accepted. I want to be liked. I want to be on shows like this. And so do I just need to be like the monkey that runs on the hamster that runs on the hamster wheel forever? Like, hey, he's on day 7,000, keep going. Like, am I doing it for that reason? Because that's not why I started. And so then I come back to, what's the reason why I started? I started because exercise is my cure, and people and connections are my fuel, and that it helps me with my anxiety and depression. And so, running for me is an intrinsically motivated thing that has external validation and value to you guys and everybody listening. But in the end, and I thought about it, I'm like, I could skip a day. I could take a day off. I don't know if I'm going to do it. So I have thought about stopping on that day. I'm like, okay, I'll stop then, but will you? And so I'm still in debate about it. But it just almost has become my lifestyle. Like there's also like a why, like,
yeah, right.
I've learned how to take care of my body. It serves my mindset. It has a lot of external benefits to people who want to learn how to change their life one tiny little sliver of improvement at a time without all the stuff that comes along with other ways that people try to improve. It's really good for me. It's like,
yeah. I like that you were honest in pointing out that there's an ego validation part of it, because of course there is, right? Like once you become that guy, it becomes part of your identity, even if it's just for yourself, even if there was, even if you weren't necessarily getting invited on shows to talk about it, there's still that part of it where you go, yeah, but that's like, it's now part of my thing. It's now part of like why people think I'm cool and want to hang out with me. So yeah, like I totally get it. And you're exactly 100% right about that. It's one of those things where, could you take a day off and break this? Like there may come a time when you realize you have to break the streak to put your ego aside, but then you get out there the very next day and you don't use it as a license to take the shortcut out of the pain of running. You suffer the ego pain of breaking the streak.
I don't know if this is ego on top of ego, but one of my thoughts was like, you know what, ego? I'm going to take a day off and I'm going to show you, I can take a day off and like to get out of it. But then isn't that ego trying to tell ego like I'm better than you, ego? This ego is bigger than yours. So I was like, I'm gonna stop just to show I can prove I can stop and keep going. I'm like, whoa.
That's right. But I like the concept. I want to go back to something that you said earlier, which is really good. And it's something I've been working on lately too, coaching yourself. And I haven't necessarily tried it in the same way, but I like the idea of the Post-it notes and writing questions down, because questions are a good way to kind of get out of your own way and get yourself to think in a different way than you would normally. It kind of breaks you out of these mental ruts. I think one of the hardest parts about coaching yourself is, making these kind of declarative statements to yourself as if you don't know, what I'm saying? Like as if you have two selves that can do that. And I get that some people are good at it. Great. I've never been good at that. I've never been great at like coaching myself and like pulling myself out of emotional ruts once I get into them. So I'm heavy on the preventative. Like it's why I pay so much attention to the quality of my sleep and supplements and all this stuff. Because if I start to spiral, it's really hard to pull myself out. And I find that I can't pull myself out by just telling myself what to do. Telling myself, like declaring to myself, don't let that get to you, or declaring this and that. Questions are really good. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a really good way to coach yourself, is to coach with questions, because it's a different thing.
So I'll try to jump into two things on that. The questions, you're right about that. And it's really like the way I would phrase them for anybody who wants to create their own like coaching board, wherever they put it in their house. When they walk by it, it makes you stop. It's like talking to yourself. It's like, how many of us do things on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis that we know we should stop doing? And when we do them, like, we're like, oh God, this is not good for me. Like, and so I have a question on my board that says, are you doing things that you don't want to do? ? Oh, yeah, I am. Are you doing things that are making you happy? Right. Oh, right. And I'm not choosing it. So it's like asking yourself questions that have an element of choice to them. Are you doing these things?
Okay.
Is this the choices that are going to make you happy? Right. Just like kind of random, like, it's like a fortune cookie. Fortune cookies create your own little, you open them up and for whatever reason you read them and then you have your own reflection on what's going on in your life reflected back to you through a fortune cookie, a lot of the time. And so you got to kind of create your own versions of that, because no matter, you'll be in a different state of mind every time you look at that, something else. But then the principle comes back to, are you making choices that make you happy? Or are you making choices that create more misery? right? I bet if I were to stop right now and I put that out there and you would have, hey, Matt, are you making choices? What choices in your life right now are bringing you more misery? Which ones should you stop?
Right.
Gene, right? We all have those.
Yeah, we all know what it is.
We don't have to unpack all that, but I think that if you can be honest with yourself, that's where it starts, because we just want to push that down. That's a hard thing to talk about. That's painful. If I do this, then I've got to do that, and that's going to unravel this whole thing. And right. And, it's just better for me to be kind of, as Thoreau said, living in quiet desperation in our lives. There's an element of quiet desperation we all kind of settle with. And I'm not going to deal with that. And that's where kind of those embers of misery and party pooper bus, that's how we get on them.
That's a new one.
The party pooper bus.
The struggle bus.
That's where Gene lives. Gene hangs out on the party pooper bus, always coming in, spoiling the party. Oh my God. Yeah, it's really good. So heavy on prevention, especially if you know that you have a kind of a leaning toward, like if you already deal with anxiety and depression anyway. I love the idea of building like routines and rituals in your life that support good mental, good mindset, good mental outlook, just in general. Because an ounce of prevention is absolutely worth a pound of cure. Like if you're prone, and I feel like I always have been, like, prone to depression and anxiety and stuff, like it's really tough to pull yourself out once you start to go down that rabbit hole. I would rather just not put my foot in the rabbit hole to begin with. That works a lot better for me. So like the rituals that I built in my life, even down to my schedule, like when I wake up in the morning and I look at my schedule and I don't have any calls in the afternoon, it's like, versus when I used to like have calls sprinkled throughout the day, or I'd have back-to-back calls almost all day with maybe a lunch carved up. I would have to do like an hour-long morning routine full of meditation and this and walking and all of this stuff, just to brace myself for stuff I didn't want to do. So there's all kinds of things like in my life that I built around me to prevent like that kind of stuff from happening, from going down into those rabbit holes. Once you do get there, I like that idea of coaching yourself through questions, asking yourself, giving yourself basically essentially like re-examining your choices, and really forcing yourself to like pit one thing against another to choose what you care about the most overall. Right now I want to do this. Right now I want to blow this off. Right now I want to just get back in bed. Right now I don't want to make any phone calls, or I don't want to send any emails. And forcing yourself to look at the consequences of that and go, do I really want to choose, 10 minutes of relaxation or one afternoon of not doing anything in exchange for the long run consequences that I know I don't want? It's like, well, no, not really. I want it to be the end of the day, and I want to look back on it and go, I'm actually proud of myself for pulling out of that and forcing myself to do something I didn't want to do. Like I'll end up feeling better about myself and so much that it offsets it. Those are all like really good, like in the moment strategies to use. Really good.
Yeah, I think there was something you said I really liked. It was about the walking. I think a lot of people, when they hear me talk, they're auditorially blind. I guess that's deaf. Visually, which it's just running, like run. Justin runs. But the thing that we're really trying to solve for right now, all of us, is a healthy mindset, longevity, and like a wellness in our lives, and that. What it's the noun, the thing, the ing, the running, the walking, is just one thing to find that could work for you. I think, and that's kind of the takeaway is, part of the reason why I run every day is that I can't lay in bed. Like I can't, I have to run. I have to actually leave the house and do something good for myself. And I think that if anybody who's struggling with any sort of challenges like that, that if you can come up with something you can consistently do that's easy, and that's where I would start. Like, I'm going to go for a walk around the block and just make that your goal to get out of the house and to build a streak around something, then that's all it really is. I could be on here talking about how, I walk the block every day for 1,000 days, or, I took the dog up and back, and whatever that one thing is, that you could build a streak around. I call it getting your win for the day.
Yeah, I picked up one of Seinfeld's books. Like it was a book of all of his best jokes or something like that from like the last 30 years. And on the back of it, it reminded I've always known this about Seinfeld because I'd heard this anecdote years ago, but it was repeated on the back of the book, so it's still fresh in my mind. But he said the best advice he can give a young comedian is to start a chain and never let it break. And the chain is every day you write one joke. And he's like, I haven't broken that chain in 35 years.
That's
early 80s.
That's it. That's
early
it.
80s. Yeah. So if you can do that, and Dan Kennedy was the same way. Dan Kennedy used to say, it's like every single day I do one thing to create demand for more Dan Kennedy. So that could be sending an article to a friend. That could be submitting an article for publication. It could be just dashing off a quick thank you note or having my, dictating something that my secretary sends out. It could be a whole host of things. It's different every day. But he says, every day I do something to create demand for more of me from my marketplace. And again, I think that's one of the things we have to define. Like the difference between this approach, and you can use these complementary, by the way. You can make big extreme changes while you're making small permanent changes, not one or the other. I do both. I'm on like an intermittent fasting diet right now that I'm experimenting with. That's a pretty radical change from what I'm used to, but I'm combining it with smaller changes I've already made, which has made getting to this point where I can experiment with this diet a lot easier. So you can do both of these things. But if you're going to do like these long-term permanent changes, you have to let go, at least at first, of the quality of each individual performance on each individual day.
Yeah,
right? You're
don't
not
measure
trying to
the
beat your
performance
time every day.
Yeah, don't try to beat the performance or the PR or time. Like, try to just consistently show up in whatever activity that is, and the more you show up in that activity, the more options and choices you have to look at what numbers you want to improve. It's the whole trusting the process. Focus on the process. The results will follow.
Yeah, exactly. That's I think that's one thing where you read books like, and I love this book actually, Relentless. But I was thinking about it the other day because I heard Tim Grover interview because he's pushing his new book, Winning, which sounds great. And he was talking about like the mentality that elite athletes have. But when you listen to them talk, you listen to Kobe talk, you listen to Michael Jordan talk, like they had to invent things out of thin air to motivate themselves to show up with the intensity that they needed to compete at that level. But in business, it is different. Like Tim Grover spells it out in Relentless. He said, look, you cannot be a cleaner, like the highest level, in every area of your life. If you're going to be a cleaner in business, you're probably going to lose in your relationships. Like that's just the bottom line. So I think if you're going to take the attitude that I'm going to, there's one area of my life where I'm going to show up and every day I have to give my best. That's awesome. Just know that you can't hold yourself accountable to do that in every area of your life. Like the other areas of your life, you want to put those on autopilot as much as you can so that you have the mental and emotional energy to bring your best self to the one thing you really care about. Like I don't do hardly anything else in the mornings because the mornings are for the business. Period. End of story. If I have free time that frees up or whatever, I'll relax in between calls or whatever. I don't find something else to do that diverts my mental energy into a different place. Like the mornings are for business. And then, I have that kind of compartmentalized because everything else in my life supports the business. And then music takes a backseat to that. And it's the mental and emotional energy that's left over from the business goes into music, which is why I don't have kids nor want them. Right. Because I just like that. It was really good to read that. Just that one sentence in Relentless was really good because it balances out the rest of the book. It's like, look, you can't be this way. You can be relentless. You can't be this way in every area of your life because you'll drive yourself insane.
I thought about children before we started this conversation.
That's unfortunate. Nobody needs it.
Yeah, as a topic of conversation, because I feel like a lot of people default to their children being their number one priority, and like this conversation ultimately is about priorities and the way that you take care of your kids and the things that you do to help them be successful. Like there's an element to, you have the choice to also say, well, what in your life right? For yourself, can you prioritize? Because you'll do, and I know it comes down to time, I know it comes down to money. And that's why I kind of try to say, like, I think I'm like the best average guy ever. Like, just like when it comes to being average, like I'm number one, 10 out of 10 being average.
The best average guy.
I'm ever. Like, you know, I'm at the 10 out of 10 on all the averages. Because right. I just, in fact, I have another, there's another shower note about averages, is that I know that people have busy lives and children and all these things that distract from that core conversation they need to have with themselves. It's hard. I suffer with that too. It's like, man, like I want to get to this, and I just don't have even the peace and silence to even listen to what that voice is, in order to even know that's something that I do or don't want to do to put my energy into. So like the frustration is even around having a moment of silence to like get clear on what's important to me. You know, when you have family and you have work and you have kids and family, you know, all the stuff going on, that finding the time to hear the voice in order to give the thing that you need for yourself, that's the challenge. And so one of the first steps really would be, well, maybe instead of trying to become a superhero on my diet and my food and my exercises, maybe I can become a superhero in finding 10 minutes of silence.
Right.
And then you start to say, well, if that's the priority, because I know until I get that clarity and that time to journal, to write it down, that I'm never going to understand what I need to do to really get what is ultimate fill in the blank your name look and feel like. Right. And that might be where the consistency comes in. And that's where the conversations with your family and your work and your schedule and the difficulties and the frictions, because that's why you don't have that time yet, because you haven't negotiated it. That's one of those things that you need to stop or start doing, that I said before. Like, you know, you need to do this, but have you had that conversation with yourself enough and the people around you to articulate, to create a space in which that's possible? And so I've done that. Like, people know, Justin, have you run yet? Have you run yet? Have you run yet? Like, you know, have you done your meditation yet today, Justin? Have you done your you know, if that's the thing that you need to consistently show up and do, once you get clear on that's the thing that needs to happen more than anything else. And although there's initial friction around creating the space for that to happen, once you break through and show up enough times in that area, the world becomes your support group. The world becomes your coaches. People know and expect that from you. And so you have to break through that threshold of showing up enough times for yourself, so that way the rest of the world and your family can show up enough for you, so where they support that from you. And so, you know, there's a lot of things that can go on in our lives that distract us from being our ultimate selves, and ultimate might just being, you know, super average in my case. But, you know, it really started with, you know, can I negotiate our bedtime? What's the bedtime look like? Right. I need to get up early, and you just start to figure out, I need to have these conversations. And it's ultimately having the silence to have the conversation with yourself in order to be clear on what are the boundaries and important for you. So whether you do or don't have kids, you got people in your lives, and like, you need to have conversations with them in order to help get to where you want to go. And
that's true.
For me, it's the silence where it first starts. Listening.
Gene, what's the, what are some of the things, like the preventative measures that keep you on track and typically keep you off the struggle bus?
It's a hell of a good question, Matt Johnson. Now, you know what? I struggle in this area of my life. I do. I think I would be much better. I would be much better of an average guy if I did a lot of these things and had these conversations. I think you talk about routine, right? My routine, other than my calendar, sucks. I mean, I am all over the place, and I'm good. I'm really good at making excuses like, well, you know, that's the way the day breaks up. This is what my kids need me to do that. I got to drive. This is, you know, I don't need to get up at 8:15. It's 9:30. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm really good. Like, it's actually, if I really think about it, it's amazing how successful I am in spite of that. I mean it. And when I say successful, I don't, you know, and I say successful in my point of view, not like, you know, if somebody looked at my books and went, dude, it doesn't make that much. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, from my perspective, I have successful areas in my life, and I think I've reached that even in spite of not being able to do something for 10 days in a row, let alone 1,000. Right. So I'm always looking to get better at that. I wish I could get into those habits quicker. I mean, I say I wish, I probably could. I'm just not focusing enough on it. But I went the other way with that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you gotta, there's gotta be something that captures your attention and your interest and makes you go, if I did that every day, it would make a huge difference in my life. And unless it's, unless it really captures your attention, then you just haven't found that thing yet, and keep your eye open for it. But
well,
that's interesting.
I do want to say, sorry, I mean it, but for me, even like back in the day, running was my thing. Like that was
Really?
what I broke. They tell you to like not break the monotony, but interrupt the pattern. And for me, even as a 16-year-old, I would put my headphones on and go out and run. And I didn't know where I was running. I didn't know where I was going. Like I would just take off. And I totally understand what Jay-Z's saying about it. You get in that space, and really the first, 7 to 12 to 15 days are tough because I got this extra fat in my back that hurts, and when it bounces, and I mean, everybody struggles with that. You run flat-footed, so your shins hurt, and then you figure out how to get up on your toes. Like there's a million things, but for me, honestly, when I'm in those moments, the CrossFit, the gym is a huge pattern interrupt for me. And when I'm running is one of them. I mean, I know those two things. If I could do that consistently for 30 days, I'd be a different dude.
Interesting.
You just hit on, and I know we're coming to the end on time here, so this is a perfect, I think I'm going to put it out there and have us discuss this, because this is the thing that I'm not quite there yet. I'd love to live like this. And is like, I tell my girlfriend, I'm like, there are 5 to 7 things that if I do them every single day in some general sense of order, I will feel amazing, and the rest of my day will go will flow. I know that. I know these things. I can write them down. I have written them down. Running is one of them. And if I do them in the morning before the rest of the day, it almost nearly guarantees the party parade, the power parade, right? It almost always works out that way. And so, for us right now, the three of us, and then anybody listening to this, I think that's one of the best things that you could do take away from this podcast is you probably have a good idea of what makes you feel bad and what makes you feel good. So don't put the bad things on the list. Put the good things on the list. And try to build a routine where and I call it the daily choreography, right? It's like a dance. Like if you can have your footstep here, and here, like you feel like you're in motion and you're dancing with the morning and the day. And so for me, I know as soon as I get up, if I make the bed, it's my first accomplishment. I come from a family of furniture makers, and so there's a level of appreciation for a well-made bed. I know if I rake the carpeting when I leave the room, and I do a little bow and prayer once I leave the room, because I'm like, bed is made, carpet's raked. There's a sense of moving on from the day and accomplishment. I know then when I walk past, I got to change the dog's pee pads, right? And I'm starting to accumulate positives. I'm starting to make the progress of the day happen. It's hard to feel bad when I've done 6 or 7 things. I've made my chia seed water, and I put it next to my desk beforehand. There's just like these little tiny things that when I string them together, 5, 7, 8 of them, if I can hit them all, hit the dance moves, it just always works. And so I would say, like, what are those for you guys? What are those for our listeners? Write those things down.
Yeah, it's going to be different for everybody. Because I will never drink chia seed water. Sorry, dude. Ever.
That helps out with another part of my day, by the way.
No, I'm sure it does. Good to know. I appreciate that. All right. So besides looking at your previous glorious appearances here on Real Estate Uncensored, where else do you want people to go and connect with you, keep up with what you're up to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Instagram is kind of where I keep my personal stuff happening. I know it sounds like a silly number, but I'm looking to raise $1,000 for 1,000 days for mental health and anxiety and depression awareness. I'm going to be choosing a charity soon to help put that. So I've got on Instagram
the Justin Zimmerman Wellbeing Fund.
Yeah, the Justin Zimmerman fitness fund. Party parade. But no, I'm gonna find a good nonprofit to put that towards.
Cool.
And so you'd be able to go to Instagram and find me under justinzim.personal.
Okay.
If you're interested in the things that I do for professional work, which we didn't spend any time talking about, which is fine. I'm a masterful deal maker, partnership creator for SaaS companies, and got a whole model that I've been building on top of my content production system at RedX that helps software companies who have similar customers find ways to serve those customers, generate leads, and build great content to teach them. So you can find me on LinkedIn under Justin Zim. So LinkedIn, whatever, Justin Zim. And then we spent no time talking about this either, but I work with and for a text messaging platform that serves a lot of real estate agents and mortgage brokers who use our tool to engage with their leads, follow up, and book the way they like on SMS without having to use a personal number. And if you guys don't mind, I got a little 50% off your first month link that anybody who wants can go get it.
Yeah, hit us. Actually, and if you can throw it in the comments too, that'll throw it right up on Facebook. So that'd be awesome.
So chat with hosts and other guests here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, chat with hosts. Yes, exactly. In the back end of in StreamYard. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So throw it in there, and so 50% off.
I think that should do it. So
perfect.
See. Try maybe the HTTPS version too. We just got this coupon code generator thing working. So if this doesn't work, I'm sorry.
I just posted it in the on the Facebook live feed.
Perfect. smsg.work/REU. Perfect. All right. Thanks, Gene. I appreciate it.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
And then Gene, you have a small side project over at the gram. I believe you have your the Genvelope is on the gram.
That's it. The Genvelope. Yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm accepting all followers and new friends. So go over there, slide into the DMs, and hit your boy up.
That's right. The Gene Volpe on Instagram. The Gene Volpe. I'm at getmicrofamous.com as always. You can follow Greg on Instagram as well. Greg McDaniel REU is his handle on Instagram. I'm not Instagram on there very much, so don't bother following me. Make sure to go to getmicrofamous.com for me. All right, gentlemen, let's wrap a bow around this episode. Greg is not here, so I don't have to pick a color. I don't have to do anything. It's fantastic. I can just see peace out ninjas. Flamingo pink. All right. Well, we'll put a flamingo pink bow around this episode just in honor of Justin. All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate it. Thanks for listening, watching. Make sure to go leave us a review. We read every single one. We appreciate every single one. Make sure it is accompanied by a 5-star rating, not a 2-star, as Greg would say. So just got playing the role here. Gentlemen, thank you. Everybody, thank you. We'll see you on the next one.
Good seeing you, boys.
Everyone. See you.